The massive ships appeared suddenly in Earth's sky one ordinary Tuesday morning. They came without warning, without signals, gliding silently into orbit around the blue planet. Their hulls shimmered with an unknown metal that seemed to absorb sunlight rather than reflect it. Captain Park Ji-won was the first human to see them. He was completing routine maintenance on the International Space Station when movement caught his eye. At first he thought it was space debris, perhaps an old satellite. But when he looked through the viewport, his tools floated from his suddenly limp fingers. "Control," he radioed to Earth, his voice surprisingly steady. "We have visitors. Many of them. I count at least 30 large vessels, possibly more arriving." The world's response was chaos. News channels interrupted regular broadcasts. Social media exploded with theories and panic. Military forces around the globe went on high alert, though no one fired any weapons. They all somehow understood that would be pointless against such visitors. 3 hours after their arrival, the aliens spoke. Every television, radio, phone, and computer screen on Earth displayed the same message simultaneously, each in the local language of its user. "People of Earth," the message began. The voice was flat but not mechanical, oddly calming despite the circumstances. "We are the Concordiat. We have peacefully integrated 37 spacefaring civilizations into our collective. Your species will now join us as protected subjects." Commander Kim Do-hyun of the United Earth Defense Force sat in the emergency command center beneath Seoul, watching the message repeat on every screen. His face remained expressionless, but his hands formed tight fists under the table. "You have 30 Earth days to dismantle your military structures and prepare for integration. Resistance is unnecessary and has never been attempted." The message ended with detailed instructions for surrender. Then the screens returned to normal, though nothing would be normal again. The United Nations called an emergency session within the hour. Representatives from all nations gathered, some physically in New York, others joining virtually. Fear filled the room like a thick fog. Ambassador Lee Hyun-ju studied the additional materials the aliens had provided, images and video of other species now living under Concordiat rule. The footage showed dozens of alien civilizations, each distinctly different from humans, all apparently living in peace under their new rulers. "They all gave up," she whispered to General Kang Tae-woo, who stood beside her chair. "Every single species surrendered without fighting." General Kang frowned. "That seems unlikely. In the entire galaxy, not one species resisted?" The UN Secretary General called for order. "We have 30 days to make a decision that will determine the future of humanity. We must remain calm and consider all options." But the options seemed few. The Concordiat's technology was clearly far beyond Earth's capabilities. Their ships alone were each larger than the largest human cities. Fighting seemed impossible, surrender inevitable. As nations argued about what to do, most began quiet preparations for surrender. Military leaders discussed disarmament plans. Governments drafted statements accepting the Concordiat's terms. In a small laboratory at the Korean Advanced Institute of Science, Dr. Baek Min-jae watched the debates with growing frustration. A physicist, with a reputation for unconventional thinking, he saw something in the alien message that others had missed. The way they phrased it, he told his research assistant Yoon-jia. They said resistance has never been attempted. Not that resistance is futile, not that resistance would fail, simply that no one has tried. Dr. Baek gathered a small team and approached General Kang with an unusual request. "I need access to all transmissions from the Concordiat fleet," he said when they met in a secure room beneath the Defense Ministry. "I believe I've found something important." General Kang was skeptical but desperate for any alternative to surrender. "What exactly are you looking for?" "Inconsistencies," Dr. Beck replied. "No species is the same. If 37 different civilizations all reacted exactly the same way to the Concordiat, that suggests something unnatural." General Kang made a call, and within hours, Dr. Beck's team had access to everything Earth's monitoring stations had captured from the alien fleet. They worked without rest, analyzing thousands of hours of communications. On the third day, Yunjia noticed something strange. The patterns are too similar, she said, pointing to her screen where signals from different Concordiate ships were displayed. Each ship communicates with others using identical protocols. There's no variation, no individual style. Dr. Bayek expanded the investigation, bringing in Dr. Han Yunha, an expert in linguistics. After studying the Concordiate's messages, she discovered something remarkable. Their language contains no actual terms for warfare, she explained to General Kang. They have many words for submission and protection, but nothing concrete about actual fighting. As the deadline approached and global panic spread, Dr. Beck formed a theory. What if the Concordiate has never actually fought a war? What if their entire strategy relies on intimidation alone? General Kang took this theory to the Emergency Defense Council meeting on day 7. Most members dismissed it as wishful thinking, but a few saw the possibility. If Dr. Bayek is right, said Commander Kim, then humanity might have an opportunity no other species has taken. The room fell silent as they considered the implications. We could be the first species to say no, General Kang said quietly. President Choi Minho shook his head. Or the first to be destroyed for our defiance. As the meeting ended without consensus, Dr. Bayek stared at the latest images of the Concordiate ships hovering above Earth. 23 days remained before the deadline. 23 days to decide humanity's fate. The choice before them was clear: surrender like every other species had done, or take a stand that no civilization in the galaxy had dared to attempt. Dr. Bayek's team worked day and night in their underground lab. The walls were covered with screens showing data from the Concordiate ships. 20 days remained before the surrender deadline. Time was running out. Researcher Yoon Jia hadn't slept in 30 hours. Her eyes burned as she studied the patterns of previous surrenders. The Concordiate had provided videos showing how other species had joined their empire. She watched each one carefully, looking for clues. Look at this, she said suddenly, pointing to her screen. The room fell silent as the other scientists gathered around. Every civilization followed exactly the same surrender pattern. They all started with speeches about fighting back. Then the Concordiate showed off some technology. Then immediate surrender. Dr. Back frowned. Play the Zeridian surrender again. The screen showed tall, blue-skinned aliens with 4 arms. Their leader made a passionate speech about freedom. Then the Concordiate demonstrated something off-screen. The Zoridian leader's face changed. He immediately signed the surrender document. Now the Peltari surrender, Dr. Beck requested. This time the aliens were short with gray scales. But their leader also gave a speech about fighting back. Then something happened off-screen. The leader's expression changed in exactly the same way as the Zoridian. He signed the surrender. That's not natural, Dr. Beck said quietly. Different species should surrender differently. They should negotiate different terms, show different emotions. This is too uniform. Dr. Han Yunha, who had been analyzing the Concordiate language, looked up from her desk. I've found something strange. Their language has 48 words for different types of submission, but they have no specific words for actual combat. They talk about regrettable consequences, but never clearly state what those consequences are. General Kang visited the lab daily for updates. When he arrived that afternoon, the team shared their findings. We believe the Concordiate has never actually fought a war, Dr. Beck explained. They've conquered 37 species without firing a single shot. General Kang looked skeptical. That's hard to believe. Not one species resisted? That's just it, said Yunjia. They all initially talked about resistance, but after the Concordiate demonstration, they all gave up immediately. It's like they were suddenly convinced fighting was pointless. What kind of demonstration? The general asked. Dr. Beck shook his head. That's what we can't figure out. The videos always cut away at that moment. We never see what convinces them to surrender. While the scientists continued their research, the world outside grew more chaotic. Some nations had already announced plans to surrender. Others were secretly building bunkers and hiding weapons. preparing for a resistance they believed would be short and fatal. The United Earth Defense Council remained deeply divided. In their fortified meeting room, arguments grew heated. "We have no choice but to surrender," insisted President Choi Min-ho. "Look at these civilizations in the Concordiat records. Many were more advanced than us, and they all submitted." General Kang stood firm. "Dr. Beck's team has found inconsistencies in the Concordiat's communications. We need more time to understand what we're really facing." "Time is the one thing we don't have," replied the president. As the debate continued, Dr. Han made a breakthrough in understanding Concordiat psychology. She requested an urgent meeting with General Kang. "Their language reveals their thinking," she explained in the secure conference room. "The Concordiat evolved from predator species, but not the kind that hunt through physical strength. They were ambush predators who relied on intimidation." "What does that mean for us?" asked the general. "It means their entire empire might be built on a bluff," Dr. Han said. "They expect rational beings to surrender when faced with overwhelming power. But they may not actually want to fight." General Kang took this information to a special session of the Defense Council. The room was tense as he shared Dr. Bayek's team's findings. "We believe the Concordiat has never actually fought a war," he said. "Their strategy relies on intimidation alone." President Choi looked unconvinced. "Even if that's true, their technology is still far beyond ours. They could destroy us if they wanted to." "Perhaps," said General Kang, "but what if they don't want to? What if warfare is as foreign to them as surrender is unthinkable to us?" The room fell silent as everyone considered this possibility. Ambassador Lee Hyun-ju, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "In human history, many conquests happened because the conquered people believed resistance was impossible. But when people chose to resist anyway, the outcome sometimes surprised everyone." The council debated through the night. By morning, they had reached a tentative decision. Rather than preparing for unconditional surrender or hopeless military resistance, they would try something no species had attempted before. A three-part plan was developed. First, diplomatic teams would stall with complex negotiation questions. Second, tech experts would quietly probe the Concordiat systems for weaknesses. Third, scientists would create the appearance of a weapon that could theoretically threaten even the Concordiat ships. Dr. Bayek's team was given new resources to develop this bluff. They worked frantically, creating plans for a theoretical device that would manipulate space-time itself. The plans were deliberately left where Concordiat monitoring would detect them. With 15 days remaining before the deadline, humanity began implementing its strategy. Instead of preparing for surrender, they prepared to be the first species in galactic history to say no to the Concordiat. The risk was enormous. If Dr. Beck and his team were wrong, Earth might be destroyed. But as General Kang told the Council, in their final meeting, throughout human history, people have risked everything for freedom. It's not always logical, but it is who we are. As the countdown to the deadline continued, the world waited anxiously to see if humanity's gamble would pay off or lead to disaster. 7 days remained before the Concordiat's deadline. The United Earth Defense Council gathered for their final strategy session in the underground bunker beneath Geneva. Maps and screens covered the walls, showing the positions of the alien ships still hovering silently above major cities. General Kang stood at the front of the room. "Our conventional weapons are useless against their technology. Fighting them directly would be suicide, but surrendering without a fight goes against everything we are as humans." President Choi nodded slowly. "Dr. Bayek's team has convinced me there might be another way. We implement the three-part plan immediately." The first part of the plan began that same day. Diplomat Nam Suman requested a direct communication channel with the Concordiat representatives. When the alien face appeared on the screen, she smiled politely. "We are preparing to address your demands," she said, her voice calm despite her racing heart. "However, human customs require that we fully understand what integration entails before proceeding. We have prepared a list of questions that must be answered according to our legal traditions." The alien representative blinked its large eyes. "Questions are permitted," Nam Suman proceeded to ask incredibly detailed questions about every aspect of surrender. How would human governments be restructured? What would happen to Earth's cultural institutions? Would humans be relocated to other planets? Each question led to more questions. Human customs are unusually complex, the alien finally commented after 3 hours. This is just the beginning, Nam Suman replied pleasantly. Our legal process requires complete clarity. While the diplomats kept the Concordiate representatives busy with endless questions, the second part of the plan activated. In a secure facility beneath Seoul, technology expert Choi Ji-hoon and his team launched carefully designed digital probes into the alien communication systems. We're not trying to hack them, Choi explained to his nervous team. We know we can't break their security. We just want to learn how they communicate. The probes were designed to be almost undetectable, gathering small pieces of information without disrupting the alien systems. Slowly, data began to flow back. Look at this, Choi said on the third day, pointing to his screen. Their ships communicate constantly, but they use a rigid protocol. There's no variation, no creativity in how they share information. Meanwhile, in a heavily guarded laboratory, Dr. Baek and physicist Song Hyun-woo worked on the third and most dangerous part of the plan. They created detailed plans for a theoretical weapon, one that, according to the deliberately exaggerated specifications, could manipulate space-time around the Concordiat ships. It doesn't have to work, Dr. Beck told General Kang during an inspection. It just has to make them believe we might have something they haven't encountered before. The plans were accidentally transmitted during one of Nam Suman's marathon negotiation sessions. The Concordiat representatives showed no immediate reaction, but Choi's monitoring team detected a surge in communications between the alien ships afterward. They took the bait, General Kang told the Defense Council. Now we wait. As the deadline approached, Earth seemed strangely calm on the surface. People went to work, children attended school, life continued. But underground, in secret facilities, around the world, humanity prepared for either a new beginning or a final stand. On the day of the deadline, leaders from every nation gathered in the United Nations General Assembly Hall. The Concordiat had agreed to receive Earth's final answer there, transmitted through their communication system. President Choi stepped to the podium. Cameras broadcast his image to every corner of the planet. He looked tired, but determined. 30 days we have considered the Concordiat's demand for our surrender, he began. We have studied their history and their interactions with other species. We have carefully weighed our options. He paused, looking directly into the camera that fed to the Concordiat ships. Humanity respectfully declines your offer of protection. Earth will remain independent. A collective gasp went through the assembly hall. Though everyone had known this was the plan, hearing the words spoken made them real. The gamble was now in play. The Concordiat representative's image appeared on the large screen above the podium. Its expression was unreadable to human eyes. Your response is unexpected, it said finally. No species has declined integration before. Humans are different, President Choi replied simply. The consequences will be regrettable, the alien said, using the same phrase from their original message. Perhaps, said President Choi, but they will be our choice. The world held its breath, waiting for the attack to begin. Military commanders stood ready at their posts, knowing their weapons would likely be useless but prepared to fight anyway. Families huddled together in homes and shelters. 1 hour passed, then 2, then a full day. No attack came. Instead, a new message arrived from the Concordiat fleet. We require additional consultation regarding your response. The deadline for integration will be extended while discussions continue. In the Defense Council's secure room, General Kang could hardly believe the report. They're stalling, he said in amazement. They don't know what to do with us. Dr. Beck, who had been invited to the meeting, nodded. Just as we suspected, they've never actually fought a war. Their entire conquest strategy is based on the assumption that rational beings will always choose surrender over conflict. Nam Suman smiled for the first time in days. Then we continue with Phase 4. We negotiate from strength, not weakness. As the Concordiate ships remained in Earth's orbit, a strange situation developed. Instead of conquering Earth, the aliens found themselves engaged in actual negotiations with humans who showed no fear. "We've changed the game," President Choi told the Council. "Now we see if we can win it." The gamble had bought humanity time. The next moves would determine their future among the stars. 2 weeks had passed since humanity refused the Concordiat's ultimatum. The alien ships still hovered in Earth's skies, but they had not attacked. Instead, they requested daily meetings with human representatives. These meetings stretched for hours as both sides talked without reaching any conclusions. Dr. Han Yuna worked late in her small office, surrounded by recordings of Concordiat communications. As Earth's leading expert on the alien language, she listened to every word they spoke, searching for hidden meanings. Tonight, something clicked in her mind. She rushed to the secure phone and called General Kang. "I need an emergency meeting," she said. "I found something important." 3 hours later, the core team gathered in the underground command center. Dr. Han stood before them, tired but excited. "I've been studying how the Concordiat speaks about conflict," she explained. "They never directly threaten violence. They speak only of regrettable consequences and necessary adjustments. At first, I thought this was just diplomatic language." She displayed a series of language patterns on the screen. "But it's more than that. Their entire communication structure lacks the concepts needed to discuss actual warfare." President Choi frowned. "What are you saying?" "I believe the Concordiat species evolved as apex predators who relied primarily on intimidation rather than combat," Dr. Han said. "Their ancestors didn't need to fight often because their threats were usually enough." General Kang leaned forward. "So their entire empire is built on a bluff," Dr. Han finished. "A very convincing bluff that has worked on 37 species, but still a bluff." The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. "We can use this," said Nami. Suman, the chief negotiator. "If they're psychologically uncomfortable with actual conflict, we can push them toward compromise." The next day, negotiator Kim Junho met with the Concordiat representatives. Following the new strategy, he subtly changed his approach. "Throughout human history," he told the aliens calmly, "we have shown a remarkable willingness to fight against overwhelming odds. When faced with certain defeat, humans often choose to fight anyway." The Concordiat representative blinked slowly. "This is irrational behavior," Kim Junho smiled. "Perhaps, but it is who we are. In our history, many small nations have fought against empires rather than surrender their freedom. Sometimes they win, sometimes they lose, but they always fight." The alien seemed disturbed by this. "Fighting without the certainty of victory is illogical." "For humans, some things are worth the risk," Kim replied. "Freedom is one of those things." Day by day, the human negotiators emphasized humanity's history of resistance against overwhelming odds. They shared stories of the 300 Spartans, of small countries resisting powerful invaders, of people choosing death over submission. The strategy worked better than they had hoped. The Concordiat representatives became increasingly unsettled. Their perfect record of bloodless conquests was at risk. Choi Ji-hoon's technology team made another breakthrough by decoding more of the alien communications. "They're arguing among themselves," he reported to General Kang. "Some want to leave Earth and move on to easier targets. Others worry about losing face if they back down. The most interesting part," he added, "is that they've requested guidance from their homeworld. Their commanders don't have the authority to handle our refusal. They never needed it before." As the standoff entered its 4th week, Earth remained in limbo. The alien ships continued their silent watch. In cities below, people adjusted to life under the shadow of potential doom. Children pointed at the ships during recess. Street vendors sold Concordiat-shaped snacks. Humans, as they always did, found ways to normalize the extraordinary. Behind the scenes, Earth's defenses improved rapidly. Scientists studied everything they could learn about Concordiat technology, Military forces developed new strategies based on what they now understood about alien psychology. In the 5th week, the Concordiat requested a special meeting. Kim Junho and Nam Suman represented humanity. When they entered the neutral meeting, room on a specially constructed platform high above Geneva, they found 3 Concordiat representatives waiting instead of the usual one. "We have received instructions from our High Council," the lead alien announced. Its voice sounded different somehow, less confident. "Your species' response is unprecedented in our history," it continued. "We have conquered 37 worlds without violence. No species has maintained resistance once our power was demonstrated." Nam Suman kept her face neutral. "As we have explained, humans value freedom above safety." "This is difficult for us to comprehend," said the alien. "But we must adapt. Our High Council has authorized an alternative arrangement for Earth." Kim Junho and Nam Suman exchanged quick glances. This was the moment they had been working toward. "We are listening," Kim said carefully. "The Concordiat proposes a modified relationship with humanity. Not as subjects, but as—" The aliens seemed to struggle with the concept, "as equals." The shock of this statement took a moment to process. No one had expected the Concordiat to offer equal standing. "Equal partners would respect each other's independence," Nam Suman said, recovering quickly. "Yes," the alien agreed. "Earth would maintain sovereignty. In exchange, humans would help facilitate peaceful relations with other species." "And the other 37 worlds?" Kim Junho asked. "What of them?" The Concordiat representatives shifted uncomfortably. "That is not open for discussion at this time." Nam Suman smiled slightly. "It will be, if we are truly to be equals." When they reported back to the Defense Council, the room erupted in disbelief and cautious celebration. What had seemed impossible a month ago was now happening. The Concordiat, faced with a species that refused to follow their script, was changing its own rules. "They're afraid of us," General Kang realized. "Not of our weapons, but of our willingness to use them even in a hopeless cause." President Choi nodded slowly. "Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our numbers. It's our stubborn refusal to surrender our freedom, even when logic says we should." The negotiations would continue for months, but the pattern was set. The species that stood alone, that faced extinction rather than submission, had changed. The rules of galactic politics forever. 1 year had passed since the day humanity said no to the Concordiat. The massive alien ships no longer cast shadows over Earth's cities. Instead, a single diplomatic vessel orbited alongside the International Space Station, a symbol of the new relationship between humans and the galaxy's dominant power. In the newly constructed Galactic Relations Center in Seoul, Ambassador Lee Hyunju prepared for her historic journey. She would be the first human to visit the Concordiat homeworld and the first to meet representatives from all 37 other species in the Empire. "Are you nervous?" asked General Kang, who had come to see her off. Ambassador Lee straightened her formal blue uniform. "A little, but mostly excited. No human has ever seen these worlds before." The journey took 3 weeks aboard a Concordiat vessel. Ambassador Lee and her team of 12 specialists spent the time studying everything they knew about the alien species they would meet. Dr. Han Yunha, now the leading expert on Concordiat language and psychology, reviewed her notes one final time. "Remember," she told the group, "the Concordiat still doesn't fully understand why we refuse to surrender. Use that confusion to our advantage." When they arrived at the Concordiat homeworld, Ambassador Lee was surprised. She had expected a harsh planet that would explain the evolution of such intimidating beings. Instead, she found a world of gentle beauty, with purple oceans and floating cities among pink clouds. Supreme Coordinator Oh Jin-young met the human delegation at the Central Diplomatic Hall. The Concordiat leader was taller than the others of its kind, with skin that shifted colors as it spoke. "Humans are the first species to join our community as allies rather than subjects," it said during the formal greeting. This new arrangement will require adjustments for all. The best relationships always require effort, Ambassador Lee replied with a diplomatic smile. The week that followed was filled with meetings, tours, and careful negotiations. The humans kept their true purpose hidden behind polite smiles and thoughtful questions. They were gathering information, building relationships, and watching for opportunities. Their chance came during a grand reception where representatives from all species in the Concordiat were present. Ambassador Lee noticed how the other aliens kept their distance from the Concordiat officials. They spoke only when spoken to and kept their eyes lowered. She approached a group of Talari, a species with feathered crests and 4 arms. "Your world must be beautiful," she said warmly. "I hope to visit someday." The Talari seemed shocked that she had initiated conversation. "Our world serves the Concordiat well," one replied stiffly. When the Concordiat officials moved to another part of the hall, Ambassador Lee spoke quietly. "Earth refused to surrender. We chose to fight rather than submit. That's why we're allies, not subjects." The Talari's eyes widened. "You refused? And they didn't destroy you?" "They never tried," she whispered. "They've never fought a real war. Their power is based on fear, not strength." The information spread quickly among the other species at the reception. By the next morning, the Concordiat called an emergency meeting with the human delegation. "You have been sharing dangerous ideas," Supreme Coordinator O accused Ambassador. Lee maintained her calm. "We've only shared our own experience. Is truth dangerous in the Concordiat?" "Stability requires proper hierarchy," the Supreme Coordinator insisted. "On Earth, we found that true stability comes from cooperation between equals," Ambassador Lee countered. "Your current system is unstable because it's built on fear. Eventually, someone will challenge it." The Concordiat leaders conferred among themselves in their own language, unaware that Dr. Han could now understand most of what they said. They were deeply worried. "We have a proposal," Ambassador Lee said when they turned back to her. "A gradual reform of the Concordiat. Transform your empire of subjects into a true community of allies. Earth will help you make this transition peacefully." "Or?" the Supreme Coordinator asked. "Or we will tell every species in your empire what we've learned," she said simply. "That the Great Concordiat has never fought a war. That their power is a bluff that only works if everyone believes it." The negotiations lasted 3 days without breaks. When they concluded, Ambassador Lee sent a message back to Earth. "Agreement reached. The galaxy is changing." 6 months later, she led the first human delegation to Talaris, the home planet of the feathered aliens. The Talari welcomed them with a ceremony celebrating their new status as an independent ally in the reformed Concordiat community. "For generations, we believed resistance was impossible," the Talari leader told Ambassador Lee as they watched the sunset from a high tower. "We surrendered because we thought we had no choice." "That's how intimidation works," Ambassador Lee replied. "It makes you defeat yourself in your mind before any real battle begins." As the reforms spread throughout the former empire, humans became teachers and guides to species that had lived under Concordiat rule for centuries. Earth ships visited world after world, bringing not weapons but ideas about freedom and self-determination. On a small green moon orbiting a gas giant, Ambassador Lee met with representatives from 12 formerly subjugated species. They had gathered to sign a new charter establishing mutual defense and trade agreements independent of Concordiat oversight. "How did humans know to resist?" asked a crystalline being from a distant system. "What made you different from all of us?" Ambassador Lee thought for a moment before answering. "Throughout our history, humans have often chosen to fight hopeless battles rather than surrender our freedom. It's not always logical, but it's deeply part of who we are." Word of humanity's stand spread across the galaxy. A new saying emerged among the stars, repeated on 100 worlds in 100 languages. "In times of peace, think like a Concordiat. In times of uncertainty, calculate like a Talari. But in times of crisis, stand firm like a human." Earth had not only saved itself, but changed the galaxy forever. Not through superior weapons or technology, but through the uniquely human quality of refusing to accept that surrender was the only option. The species that once ruled through fear now learned to lead through respect. And humanity, once alone, on its small blue planet, found its place among the stars not as conquerors or subjects but as the teachers of courage to a galaxy that had forgotten how to resist.